cry, I'm sorry. I just call. Sometime I'll be home soon. It won't be long, I promise. I will be okay. Just wipe those tears off of your face. I'm sorry. I won't right my wrongs. I'm guilty. Lord have mercy. Please forgive me. Mama, please don't you cry. I'm sorry. 125 ice cold showers. 225 days I'm counting. Trying to hold on, but the time goes slowly.
February 13th, 2019. YNW Melly, also known as Jamel Demons, is arrested and charged with the murder of 2 of his childhood best friends. Now, as the story goes, sometime in October 2018, Mr. Melly, Mr. Cortland, Mr. Thomas Jr., and another man, Mr. Williams, get into YNW Melly's vehicle, his Jeep Compass. While inside that Compass, the murder of 2 happened. So what police was able to gather, allegedly, we're going to use allegedly because we do not need any Tasha K situations, but this is what happened. They all leave a studio. There was a studio down in Florida. All of the 4 young men get into this Jeep Compass. We know they get into the Jeep Compass because there was surveillance footage as they left the parking lot at that studio. Now, Mr. Cortland gets in the driver's seat. Mr. Melly gets in the back seat on the passenger side. And then you have Mr. Thomas Jr. and Mr. Williams in the 2 seats diagonal across from each other. So at some point, Mr. Melly shoots Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams was shot from the side, from his left side. That was the original path wound that police were able to figure out. So they get in a car. Mr. Williams is shot from his left side. And also, Mr. Thomas Jr. is shot in the back of the head. The only person that could have shot them at this angle, allegedly, is Mr. Melly, Mr. Demons, because he was sitting in the perfect spot to shoot this way and this way. Now, I don't know how quick was his trigger pull, because I wonder if you shoot somebody and the person beside you see you shoot that person and they're like, oh my gosh, what is that? You know, did they try to run? Like, what happened? But this is what police have gathered, that both men were shot multiple times, but the main initial wound, that fatal wound, came from headshots. Mr. Cortland and Mr. Demons, they panic. They obviously did not have a story put together. So they ride around in the Jeep Compass with 2 dead bodies. And police know they rode around with the dead bodies because the cell phone records, they literally track the pings of the cell phone. They can see the cell phones moving. They see all of this. The police notice the cell phones then go to a street called Pembroke Road, in which it stays for a while. Now, allegedly, this is what happened. Mr. Melly and Mr. Cortland, the men are already deceased. They get out of the car on Pembroke Road and they shoot 4 shots each into the vehicle to try to corroborate this story that they're going to tell authorities and hospital staff. They they shoot 4 times each, so that's 8 shots into the passenger sides of the vehicle. At that point, Mr. Melly has someone come pick him up. This person that picks him up was later identified as a manager. That manager has not yet been charged in this case, so I think this case is going to have a lot of moving pieces, so pay attention. Then Mr. Cortland drives to Memorial Hospital, drops the 2 men off, tells the doctors, the nurses, the emergency room staff that there was a drive-by shooting, that he was able to duck and hide under the steering wheel, and that he is okay, but his 2 friends have been hurt. The hospital staff, the doctors, the nurses, they get the bodies out of the car and they begin to try to work and try to save these men until they realize that the men, their body temperature has already cooled, meaning these 2 people have been dead for some time. Then the hospital staff alerts authorities like, no, these men have been dead for some time. The hospital staff, they have to report this to police and investigators. So that was red flag number 1 for the investigators. The investigators later do an autopsy to determine, at what point was the fatal wound, for these men. Like they did, it's called a wound path test. They did that. They see, bam, he's shot from a range that is not conducive of any of the 8 shots that went into the vehicle. But police have also said they have phone records where they have an audio recording of Mr. Melly admitting to the crime. In this supposed alleged recording, Mr. Melly admits that he murdered his 2 best childhood friends for financial gain. He did this for money. And so at that point, the prosecutors are saying, we want the death penalty. Mr. Cortland, the co-conspirator with Mr. Melly, has been released on bond. His bond was $90,000. He has been released. So I'm wondering if they have used him to set up Mr. Melly, if this audio recording of admission came from Mr. Cortland, because he's out on bail. So now, after all of this case is going to trial, and it sounds like the odds are stacked against Mr. Melly. It sounds like the police have everything they need. And I know what you're thinking. Why do the police in Florida care about black on black crime? They really don't. They are trying to also tie in another case on Mr. Melly. They're trying to accuse him of being involved in the shooting of an off-duty police officer. So I really think that is why they are seeking the death penalty. Let's talk. Subscribe to the channel for more of my content. I drop videos every Monday. This is Daisha Shakila, and I'm out.